Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time out at the end of, I'm sure, what is a busy day for you on Monday morning. And yeah, welcome everybody that is here for the live recording. As you've seen in the chat box there, I've just invited people to say what background they're from. We have people from all over. We've got ecological consults, we've got a rope access service, we've got roofing industry, construction, architects, and conservation workers as well. So lots of different backgrounds, which is really brilliant to see as we try to give nature a home together. Also, hello to people that will be watching this on recording. We've been asked by the Edinburgh College of Art to send it to them after to put onto their architecture curriculum. And we also might be using it for different CPDs as well, which you'll hear a little bit more about later. So welcome everybody that's watching this. My name's Katie O'Neill and I'm the RSPB Swift Project Officer. And I've been in this post for 2 years as part of Edinburgh Swift Cities project. And today's talk is, as you'll know, building with biodiversity in mind, Swift-friendly infrastructure. So what we'll be looking at and hearing about today will be RSPB and the Swift project, the wonderful Swifts that I've been nattering about for the past 2 years at people. I do really love them. The current situation and legislation that is in place across the UK, nests, both their protection and installation. We'll have interviews, both live and recorded, from professionals on the field in different sectors. And then at the very end, we'll have a question and answer panel from myself, somebody from the National Federation of Roofing Contractors, and from the Edinburgh City Council. So RSPB is the UK's largest conservation organisation. It started protecting birds, but obviously reaches beyond that now. The main aim is to give nature a home, and one of our top strategies is to save nature through people. And this is exactly why we're doing this, working with people to help nature. The swifts in particular are a really fantastic example of that. The way that we protect swifts, as we'll find out later on, is to protect their homes. And there's also ways to do that that protects our homes as well. So it's a really lovely example. It doesn't have to be nature or humans kind of thing. It can be both. We're funded by ScottishPower Foundation for the last 1.5 years for this project. And what have we got up to in that time? We've carried out 543 Swift surveys and directly trained 144 people to be able to do surveys. Engaged with 70 volunteers that have received multiple trainings throughout the year, and 271 in total people that have received workshops and trainings. We've created 30 Swift hubs in Edinburgh City. So those were Swift streets where they had nest boxes and wildflowers, or Swift houses that had multiple Swift nest boxes on them, or also places that were really good to look for Swifts as well. We had 4 murals as well, so if you're ever in Edinburgh, they're really lovely to go and see. We had a self-led cycle path that engaged with 2,500 people. So as you can see, there's just generally a lot of public interest. The Swifts are really lovely to speak with people about. It seems to really catch people's attention. There's been a lot of interest in doing news articles and podcasts, documentaries, videos. In total, we've installed 180 nest boxes. We've trained 45 people to be able to build nest boxes. We've supported other projects to start across the UK. We did important research into where swifts eat around Edinburgh, and that was mainly in the Green Belt. We've had lots of interest and attendance to events by local MPs and MSPs. So the wonderful bird of the swift. This is how it looks. It has this tiny short forked tail. It looks a bit like an anchor whenever it's flying. So it's got like flat wings and then they kind of curve slightly at the ends. They look a bit disproportionate. So their wings are twice the size. From tip to tip of their wings are 15 inches. And from their tail to their nose are 7 inches. So their wingspan is twice the size of their body. There's a good reason for that. And that's well and good saying it like that. But when you see other birds that look very similar, sometimes it's hard to tell them apart. So I'll give you a few minutes to see if you know that bird while I mute whoever is making a noise. So if you just want to check if you're muted, thank you. Sorry. Quite easily distracted. Neil Armstrong, if you're there, could you mute, please? Okay. So, out of these birds, this one is the swift, Apis apis, and the breakdown of that name means the apis means without foot, which is, they obviously have feet, but they used to think that they didn't because they never saw them landing. This bird is the swallow, and it's got, you can tell the difference between these two birds. It's got that long tail. And then the house martin can also look very similar to swifts in the sky. However, the difference there is that it has a white belly rather than a black looking belly. And this is what it looks like in real life. And what's so interesting about the swifts? Well, the swifts were built for serious speed, stamina, and skill. They are the fastest bird at level height, reaching up to 69 miles per hour. They have really incredible stamina. So in the yellow, in the Northern Hemisphere, that's where they spend the summers breeding between May and August. And then they spend the rest of their time in the Northern Hemisphere's winter. So our winter, they go down to the continent of Africa, where it's obviously summer there. So they basically chase the summer the whole time, but that is obviously incredible stamina to be able to do that. A couple of years ago, they were able to put tiny little backpacks on the swifts with satellites to be able to look at where they flew. Because they used to believe that they went into mud and spent the winter there. But actually they fly the whole way to the Congo, and that's where they spend their winter. And that's all very impressive because they are the weight of a cream egg. So very, very, very far indeed. The final fascinating thing about them is that they never land. So when they leave Edinburgh in the UK, they fly non-stop the whole way to Africa, where they still continue to fly and then fly back. So they don't land while they're in the continent of Africa. So they eat, drink, bathe, and even mate on the wing. Also, they obviously have to sleep while they're flying as well. So they do something called unihemispherical slow wave sleep, where they essentially turn off half their brain and go up really high into the airwaves and drift in the airwaves, keeping one half of their brain awake to be able to look out for any predators. And this is little swiftlets whenever they're born. They're not super cute whenever they're first born, like a bit like dinosaurs, but after a while they kind of become a bit more cute. The adults pair for life. They lay between 1 and 3 white eggs, and they take up to 56 days to fledge. And at 4 weeks old, they start doing press-ups inside of the nest to get strong enough to be able to fly to the Congo. And at 6 weeks old, they leave. So I wonder if you might know when the swifts evolved. I think that picture gave a little bit of a clue. They evolved way back 60 million years ago, so that's why they look a bit like dinosaurs whenever they're born. So they're very, very, very ancient. So since humans have been around, swifts have been around much longer than that. And that is why there's a kind of a very positive relationship between humans and swifts. A lot of people that I've spoken to get really excited about swifts returning back in the summer. So since humans evolved, the swifts have signified in the Northern Hemisphere the coming of summer and brighter and warmer days. So there's a very positive relationship for a lot of people with the swifts. So what's happening now? Well, in the last 25 years, the swifts have declined up to 60%. Whenever I started this job, the swifts were in amber conservation status for protection. However, just in the last 2 weeks, they've moved to red conservation status, which means critically endangered. And that's obviously very sad. In in the Irish UK conservation status list, they moved to red in April, but for the UK, they just moved there 2 weeks ago. And why is that? Well, it's not fully clear, but there's a few considerations. Some of you might recognise this picture. You used to see a lot of insects landing on screens of cars whenever you went for a drive, and that doesn't happen so much anymore. The insect population is plummeting and swifts eat flying insects. As well, as you saw, for their migration route is very far. They are therefore more susceptible to freak weather conditions such as storms can blow them off course. And that happened in 2019, where swifts were blown into Greek islands and so very far off their normal course. And a lot of them died. So these are both considered, but they're not scientifically proven as the cause of decline for swifts. What has been scientifically proven is the decrease in habitat availability. So swifts nest underneath the eaves of roofs, and this is what's declined, and this is what has caused the swift species population to decline. And so this is some videos of them going in, or pictures of them going in underneath the eaves where they nest. They really like the little crevices, and that's where they go in. So this decline in habitat availability is due to a number of reasons. Some reasons can be that their nest sites are getting blocked during building repairs or insulation or roof renovation, new builds not yet providing swift nest bricks, and buildings being demolished without realising there are nests there due to lack of data or ID ability. These are just some of the reasons. So that's all very depressing, but the main point of this talk is to focus on what we can do. And as I said, it's very much so coming from the angle of we can help the swifts, we can still have our homes and we can still carry out our works as normal. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So we'll move on to the solutions now. We need a multiple level approach to this, to protecting the swifts. We have legislation in place, and that ties into regional, national legislation that's happening. I'll say a bit more about that later on. So we need a top-down approach, but we also need a bottom-up approach, which is why we're here today. So to work with lots of different sectors to ensure that the swift homes are protected. So swift nests, and this part is more so for building maintenance groups such as roofers, chimneys, scaffolding, and external cleaning services. We need collaboration to spread awareness, to offer it as a service. And again, I'll keep saying this just so we know that we're all on the same team, basically. The services can be carried through as well as swift protection. So a little insight into how to identify a swift nest box, or a swift nest, not a nest box. So some of the ones I've seen, you would miss them so easily. They can be tiny, tiny little crevices just at the side of walls, underneath the tiles, at the edge of the roof. If you know what you're looking for, you can tune your eye in a little bit more to it, but they also are very easy to miss. Some of them, sometimes seeing them is a bit of luck. You're just walking past and they might swoop out or swoop into the nesting sites. If you do see a nesting site, or if you're going to work somewhere and you're not sure if there's a swift nesting there, you can check something called swiftmapper.org and look for the little symbol of the yellow nest. So that signifies that there's a swift nesting there, and you can actually go onto this. It's a free website. You can go and look at your street, at your workplace, and see if there's swifts nesting there at the minute. And that's where the 543 surveys, that's where all the information has been logged onto in Edinburgh, but it's used all across the UK and further afield as well. And that can just help you to know if there's a swift nesting nearby. If you do identify a swift nest, the first point of call is to speak directly with homeowners to let them know that there are swifts nesting there. And in that way, we're helping to educate and raise awareness about the importance of retaining every single nest. And you can go through these following 4 options with a homeowner, or if you're a homeowner yourself and you know that there's a swift nesting there. So the absolute best gold standard, number 1, is to leave the nest alone. So the swifts have chosen that crevice for a particular reason. It suits them well. and sometimes it can take a bit of a while to get them to nest in human-made nest boxes. So the best thing to do is to leave that particular nest alone. The next thing that you can do to help the swifts is to not do work on the roof or on the building, so scaffolding or whatever it is, during the swift season when they're nesting. So that's between May and August. And that's not just me saying that. In the UK, the swifts are protected under the Wildlife and Countryside Act and the Nature Conservation Act in 2004. And it is an offence to intentionally destroy or otherwise interfere with the nest of any wild bird while it is in use or being built. And it's also an offence to intentionally obstruct a bird from using its nest or destroying an egg. And there's fines for that as well. So just so you know the legislation. So the idea behind that would be like, if it is possible to hold off on this work until after August, then that would be the best idea. Or if it's possible to prioritize that works before May, that would be good as well. Obviously, that's not always possible, and we obviously understand that. What you can do, and there's a positive example of this happening, that if it is in season and the roofs really need to, the works really need to happen, you can just preserve the access holes for the swifts. So an example for that is in Spain, where some people were in a cafe looking up at the scaffolding and knew that there were swifts nesting in there, saw them trying to get in. So they just spoke with the people working there. And the people that were doing the scaffolding, they removed the net, like pulled it down, so that there was still space for the swifts to get into their nest. So they were still able to get in and out, and the people were still able to carry through their works. When it's out of season and the roof really needs, or the works like the building, whatever it is, insulation really needs to be done, you can still carry that through as long as you ensure that the entrance holes are there and exactly matching the old ones. So a positive example of that is down in the south of England. Again, it was just down to local residents knowing that swifts nested there every year. And these were heritage roofers, so really into the conservation of the building. And they just spoke with the people, and what they did is they took all the tiles off, they marked exactly where the swift nest entrance holes were, and then they replaced the tiles and created those little holes again. And that successfully supported the swift population the following year. If all of the above can't happen, where the nests need to be taken out or covered up, the next best thing to do is to retrofit nest boxes in an ecologically sound way. So that's what these are, that's what they can look like. And they can be quite discreet into the building, or they can stick out a little bit, but not too intrusive. So what you would have is on the external walls, individual nest boxes created, drilled into wood or stone. So you can get ones from the RSPB website, from Schwegler, as well as really good make of a nest box. You can also make them yourself, and we've got lots of good examples of that happening in Edinburgh as well. You can also put nest boxes into the gable ends. So if you drill a hole into the wall and then put the nest box over on the inside of the building, and the swifts just fly into the nest box. You can put them underneath the eaves with a simple soffit design. So that's basically lots of wood partitioned into different access points for the swift nests. It's okay if they're right beside each other, and they actually are used to nesting in colonies, so them being quite close together is good for them. Another example would be to put little hooded ventilation tiles onto roofs, onto pant tile roofs. And this means that it just, is a ventilation tile, so it doesn't stick out aesthetically. But on the other side, there's little swift nest boxes for the swifts to create a nest. And there's lots of positive examples of this happening. There's really good case studies on actionforswifts.com, and first-hand accounts of people saying that it in no way compromised the weatherproofability of the roof. And just from a few tiles being raised, they actually created more nests than previous years. So some really positive stories and storytelling, and further ways to engage people to generate more work for you as an industry. So we're going to hear from our first speaker, Gary Walpole from NFRC, and I'm very grateful for him for speaking, particularly because we already did this and it didn't save. So thank you for coming along again, Gary. So I'll just stop and then we'll be able to see you.
That's fine, Katie. Yeah. So hello, everyone. My name's Gary Walpole. I'm the Safety, Health and Environmental Officer at the National Federation of Roofing Contractors. That's normally abbreviated to NFRC. So you'll see, you'll have seen that on the slides. So just a little bit about the NFRC. We're the largest roofing trade association in the UK, and we represent over 70% of the roofing industry by volume. And actually next year we'll be celebrating our 130th birthday, and we've established ourselves as the voice of the roofing industry, constantly adapting to change and innovation.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Gary. Great to have you on board with this. So why do you support the Swift conservation movement amongst roofers?
Yeah, I mean, we're really keen, and personally, I'm really keen to support this initiative. I mean, as you said, Katie, swifts are miraculous birds. They commute between the English summers and the African summers as well. And they clock up, in the region of 4 million miles throughout their lifetime. That's incredible statistics, And I think the oldest swift that was ringed in the UK was 21 years. That's incredible, isn't it? Absolutely incredible. So we should never accept the vanishing of swifts, especially, as Katie pointed out, that they've just been added to the red list of Britain's most endangered birds at the start of December. And as Katie said, swift populations have fallen by 60% since 1995. So it's vital that we should be working with the RSPB to mitigate against this population decline. We need to educate not only the roofing contractors, but the developers, building owners, on the importance of protecting swift nest sites. And I noticed in the chat, Tim Merchant said that some owners don't really like having swifts nesting in their roofs. Well, they're the ones that need educating, because they're not causing any damage. And, as you've shown with your innovative nest boxes, they don't really need to be inside the actual loft area.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that, Gary. Brilliant. And how will NFRC be supporting the swift conservation?
Well, the roofing industry is about to embark on a massive retrofit of roofs across the UK's existing building stock over the next 30 years. And that's because we need to achieve, reach the target of net zero carbon by 2050. But whilst achieving net zero carbon, it's vital that it's vital to protect the climate. We must ensure that when we do so, we don't do it at the expense of our natural capital. So it's really important that we educate and train our members to ensure that they can identify nesting sites when they're carrying out roof surveys, so they can plan to protect the swifts. We also run a roofer accreditation scheme called RoofCert, which ensures roofers stay current with building regulations and British standards. So we could add the Swift training module to the RoofCert portal quite simply to ensure accredited roofers have undertaken the training module. So there's lots of things we can do in the immediate term, if you like.
That's brilliant, Gary. That's really fabulous. That would make my year. So following your personal expertise and experience, do you think, you've already touched on this a bit, but do you think there will be public support for this initiative?
Oh, most definitely, Katie. We're already seeing it. You highlighted an NFRC member in your presentation, Clark Roofing, and in fact, they've just finished another refurbishment project on the library at Battle in East Sussex. Now, I know that's a long way away from Edinburgh,
Still,
but Clark Roofing worked with Hastings and Rother Swift Conservation Group, and they've installed 12 bespoke Swift nest boxes actually in the brickwork. So, and there's pictures on their website and on their social media pages. And obviously both Clark Roofing and the Conservation Group are really looking forward to the Swifts returning in 2022 to see their new homes. And from a personal point of view, I'd like the Swift to become the poster boy / girl of the bird community that chooses to nest in our roofs, because they're not the only ones. Actually, you showed 3 birds there earlier, and they all choose roofs as nest sites. So we have to lead the way in allowing birds to nest in roofs. We've done that by protecting bat roosts, for example, in roof spaces, and we now need to pay the same attention to protecting Swift nest sites as well.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you so much, Guy. It was really wonderful to have your input, and to have the support of NFRC with all of this as well is really fantastic. So thank you very much.
No, we're really keen to support.
Brilliant. So we're moving from a national level now to a more local level. So I have a talk here from a local Edinburgh roofing group that have very recently signed a pledge to put Swifts into their practice. So this is just a wee interview with them as well.
Hi, I'm Claire Stewart. I'm the Communications Strategy Manager at Saltire Roofing and Building, and I've got our 2 green champions from within the team with me today.
Hi, I'm Catherine Mason. I'm the Office Manager for Saltire Roofing.
Hi, I'm Alan Davey, and I'm the Operations Manager.
Brilliant. So thank you so much for coming today and giving us your professional opinion. It's really great to have you on board as the Edinburgh's first roofing company that's going to engage with Swift-friendly roofing. So thank you. And yeah, we'll get started asking you a few questions just now. So the first one is, what is your professional opinion about being a Swift-friendly roofer? Do you think it's financially viable and possible for you?
We're delighted to have the opportunity to lead by example in our industry by becoming a Swift-friendly roofing company. We think it's financially viable, and it's something we're happy to invest into. We're already investigating how we can work with others to build the nest boxes and how these could be built sustainably from offcuts and surplus materials which can be reused.
Brilliant. Yeah, really great innovative thinking as well. What challenges might you imagine facing, and how do you think you would approach overcoming these challenges?
We did discuss this at length within our team, and we think we may face challenges where urgent works are required to a roof in which Swifts are found to be nesting, so perhaps during the nesting season. However, we are pledging to take all reasonable and practicable steps to ensure those nests are not disturbed and the Swifts are protected. There may also be challenges in educating some customers about the importance of protecting the Swifts and about the conservation legislation that's in place too. However, having your leaflet readily available from the RSPB will help, and we'll ensure that our staff are all fully trained on Swift-friendly roofing by the spring.
Fabulous, that's a really great approach. So the final question is, why do you think it's important to have Swift-friendly roofing?
We were really sad to hear that Swifts are now on the red list of endangered birds in the UK, and we want to do our bit to stop them from becoming extinct. As a roofing company, we believe we could play a significant role here in raising awareness of the importance of Swift conservation, and also educate our clients and customers on how they can help too. We want to act as a positive role model for the roofing and building industry by demonstrating best practice in protecting our environment, and being a Swift-friendly roofer is a badge we will proudly wear.
Brilliant. Oh, well, thank you so much for your time. It's great to have your input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, thank you so much to Saltire Roofing and Building Limited, who are Edinburgh's first Swift-friendly roofing company. And yeah, they've pledged to put Swift conservation into their practice. And we look forward to seeing what they get up to in the coming year. So just to summarize that aspect of it, the kind of more the building maintenance aspect of Swift protection and conservation. So to be aware of nesting swifts or swift nests, both in season and out of season, to work outside of swift season where possible, and where it isn't possible, to create a safe passage for swifts to be able to come into and out of their swift nest boxes and entrance holes. To offer information about swifts to clients. So if you're also interested in the little leaflet that was referenced there, please get in touch and I can send you information. And how we're trying to encourage it to be a kind of self-sustaining scheme, it is to ask the clients to buy pre-made nest boxes and to pay for your time. So as a tradesperson, it's no money, it's nothing off your back, and if you will be gaining from it. The purchasing power would be on the clients, and it's something that we strongly believe that is where purchasing power is going now. With COP, with everything that's happened this year, there's so much more awareness than there ever was, and we believe that where people can, a lot of people are happy to pay, and we do have some research to back that up also. So where do you get these nest boxes and different things? You can buy them pre-made, like the Schwegler ones that I mentioned, or you can have them. Can people just check if they're muted? Thank you. Or you can get them on. Found it. There we go. You can get them on Swift Conservation. There's a shopping list about where all the different nest boxes, where you can buy them. We also really encourage, so then there's you can make it yourself as well, like was referenced there. You can make your own nest boxes. There's instructions on the RSPB website. There's also fitting instructions for where exactly you put them in an ecologically sound way, which I'll also be explaining in a little bit. We also really encourage sourcing them locally, employing local woodworkers. This is a whole list of people that built their own nest boxes within Edinburgh, and that was really lovely to see. So that's the Forge, and they're a local woodworking group, and St Ninians and Triduana are a church parish in Edinburgh, and they built these nest boxes themselves as well. A few more up close. They had a wee competition there to see who could burn on the best looking Swift. So it really creates that sense of community as well. St Mary's Cathedral, they created very specialised nest boxes that fit into the louvres, where the swifts just like flew into the nest boxes. And if you know St Mary's Cathedral or not, that's in Edinburgh and it's really above the skyline. So we hope one day there'll be lots of swifts flying into those nest boxes. As you can see, they're on the inside, and that is partly also because obviously it's an old building, it's a listed building. And I'll just briefly mention a little bit about that, but there will be a Q&A at the end with a City of Edinburgh Council member, where you could ask this in more detail. Basically, you just need to do a really simple application if it's a listed building to get consent. All the applications that I put through were all positive, and I was able to put the nest boxes onto the listed buildings with consideration. So using the right tools, the mason screws and drill, and putting sealant around the screws to stop the freeze and thaw effect, and using wall plugs as well. So this is a really wonderful example by Anderson's External Cleaning, and I believe Alan's here tonight watching this. So this was Alan putting up the nest boxes in Raphoe in West Edinburgh, and that was really brilliant to have him on board. And we have it all done by safety standards here. There's a fire officer holding the ladder at the bottom. So what are the kind of technical things to consider when putting up a nest box? Ecologically as well, you need to think about what's in the surroundings. So the nest boxes need to be 5 meters away from any trees, and that's to stop any predators. They need to be 5 meters high of unobstructed space beneath. And that's because the swifts have little weak legs. They, you see other birds kind of lifting off from the ground and being able to fly. The swifts can't do that because their legs aren't strong enough. So when they leave the nest, they kind of fall out of the nest and swoop down and swoop up again. So they need that clear space right beneath the nest boxes. It's really important. And also not put the nest boxes above windows where there can be disturbance, and for ideally for the nest boxes to be northeast or northwest facing, and this avoids overheating. Tips to improve success: swifts return to where they were born. So if you think back to the swift mapper, you can see where swifts nest. If you put a swift box where there was previously swifts, then there's a higher likelihood of them nesting in that nest. You can also add swift callers, which I'll say a little bit more about later on, but it basically gives out a swift call that attracts the swift to check out the box, and then it increases the chances of nesting. And there's lots of positive examples of that happening. You can see further information about that. Again, a really fantastic website is the Swift Conservation website. It has swift call instructions, attraction call CDs, and how to buy and set up a swift call system. So moving on to the building development side of things for planners, architects and housing developers. The main things in this aspect of it is to protect existing nests from demolition. Again, where the swifts have found to nest, it's the best place for them. So protecting those is the most important thing that we can do. And then where there are new builds going in, installing swift bricks into new builds is a very easy way for everyone to meet all the things that they need to. And there's some examples of those coming up. So in terms of that kind of demolition side of things, we have RSPB caseworkers looking at new developments that get put through the City Council. Is it being demolished? Well, there might be swift nest boxes there. You can check on Swift Mapper, or you can go and look at the site to see if there's swifts nesting there. So again, just the idea that we've got people at all levels engaged in this. As well, they communicate with homeowners, property owners, architects and construction companies to suggest the inclusion of swift bricks into their build. And there is legislative guidance from the Edinburgh City Council that suggests that all new builds should have swift bricks in them. It has some information about it, that same as the nest boxes, needs to be unobstructed, have clear access. It's okay to have them in groups because they like to nest in colonies. And the swift bricks can be, when they're laid, they can be treated the exact same as normal bricks. So they can be covered in render when they're being laid. As well as this bottom-up approach, we also have a top-down approach. So the National Planning Framework 4 is currently under consultation in Scotland, so this one applies to Scotland. RSPB will be demanding better inclusion of climate and biodiversity, so much like what Gary was talking about, what we've been talking about this whole time. Nature is needed to be included more in every aspect of things, as it plays such a huge role in societal well-being and economy, as we found out particularly over the past 2 years. That is set to include stuff like improving an area of land that's being developed, improving it for biodiversity, so not just replacing what was there, but actually making it even better, retaining as much as possible and making it even better. The equivalent in Northern Ireland says planning policies must have regard to any strategy designated for the conservation of biodiversity. There's a more detailed and tangible way of incorporating biodiversity in the local planning authorities, both Derry and Donegal. So I can send examples of that if you're interested to see that. And finally, the UK Environment Bill that applies only to England and Wales. that was published this autumn. Slightly disappointed, not going to lie, but they did include biodiversity net gain, which again is that idea of improving land that's developed for wildlife. And this time they actually had a percentage on it as well. So it had to improve that land for at least 10%, by at least 10%. So some of the bricks that were shown earlier, this is what they look like. And again, they can just be laid in the same ways as normal bricks. And that was from the Edinburgh City Council. Timothy, could you please mute your, if you can hear me, can you please mute your thing? Sorry, it keeps going on. Yeah, so the Edinburgh City Council Swift Brick Guidance has got all the different examples. You can find that online, and it links you to all the different shops for all these different types of Swift bricks. So we're going to hear another case study from someone that has been doing this for many years and incorporate Swift bricks.
Hi, my name is Niall O'Neill. I'm talking to you from Dion Architects in Belfast. We've been working in the community and educational sector, delivering sustainable architectural projects for over 20 years. We designed and built our first zero carbon running cost building in 2001, incorporating extra insulation.
Sorry, you can't hear this. Okay.
And I just call him my little sweetheart, you know. So he gets called. It very rarely gets called by his name, you know. And if I don't call him my little sweetheart, I call him cheeky face. You know?
Timothy, could you stop the? Oh my gosh. Okay, there we go. That worked. So I'll just start that again.
Hi, my name is Niall O'Neill. I'm talking to you from Dion Architects in Belfast. We've been working in the community and educational sector, delivering sustainable architectural projects for over 20 years. We designed and built our first zero carbon running cost building in 2001, incorporating extra insulation, wind power, and photovoltaics. We've installed over 100 Swift bricks and over 250 nest boxes to date. Swift bricks are by far the best. Being involved in convincing people to install Swift bricks within their buildings, there's been concerns that have been expressed basically over and over again. Will the brick boxes be noticeable? Will they detract from the building? The built-in brick boxes are discreet. The visible opening is 6.5 by 2.5 centimeters. They do provide long-term dry habitat. Are they expensive? They cost between 30 and 35 pounds. They're the same price as a surface fixed bird box, and there is no additional cost for building in when they're used in a new building. What about creating a mess in the wall below the box? Swifts are tidy, they look after the boxes and they look after their surroundings. They clear the boxes at the end of the season, so there's no unsightly mess or degradation of the building fabric. These are magnificent birds. They're born here and they live their lives on the wing, traveling down through Europe and Africa and back. Our greatest challenge is attracting swifts into the newly constructed nest boxes. Swifts tend to return to the previous nest sites. So we need to encourage them to inhabit these new nest boxes. So we've been able to get people to play Swift boxes, Swift calls, but people move on, and it's not always easy to install the amplifier, the speaker, all the kind of connections that go with it. So one thing that would make a massive difference would be if a solar powered sound box could be developed, something that could be fixed to the outside of the building with an integral battery, amplifier, speaker, and control system that could automate the call times so that the birds were attracted at the right time. These sound boxes could be reused over and over on different locations once the swift boxes were inhabited.
So thank you to Niall and Neil from D on Architects. So yeah, designing into buildings over 100 Swift bricks and installing over 250 Nest boxes in the buildings in the last decade or so is really fantastic. And I also wanted to share some really exciting news that RSPB has been developing exactly that, the solar powered Swift collar. So we've had 10 this year that we've been piloting, so hopefully they'll be in wider sale in the next couple of years. So our final interview that we'll be hearing from just now, and this is Barrett's Developments, who we've been working with over the past year to get Swifts more again put onto the menu. It's actually me speaking, but so I am speaking on behalf of Helen Niall, who is the head of biodiversity at Barrett's Developments. She wasn't able to make the talk today, so I am using her slides and the notes that she sent me. So, since 2017, Barrett's has been working with RSPB to ensure that all developments incorporate the Manthrope Swift nesting bricks in developments where a planning condition was made for Swift bricks or integral nesting boxes. So that's the picture on the left-hand side. A year later, in 2018, Barrett's committed to installing Swift nesting bricks in developments situated in and around 10 key cities that in the past were strongholds for Swifts, but were now experiencing steep declines in their local Swift population. Since then, Barrett's have installed over 3,000 boxes in their developments across the UK, with a year-on-year increase. Barrett's key purpose is to improve nesting opportunities for Swifts in recognition that they need all the help that they can get right now. But Barrett's also want to try and make developments permeable spaces for wildlife, improving the chances of our homeowners actually experiencing nature from their doorstep, leading to all the other health and mental well-being benefits that come with those encounters. The aim of this talk is to reinforce our commitment, Barrett's commitment, to Swift conservation, provide an insight into why it's important to conserve Swifts, how to get involved at the housing development level, and the benefits to the company from getting involved. Next slide. Here we go. Research undertaken by the RSPB has shown that homeowners overwhelmingly support the inclusion of these features in their houses, and Barrett's has not had any complaints from customers. But this is still a relatively new initiative in Scotland, and where Barrett's needs to put more effort is in explaining their installation and providing guidance to contractors to make sure that the right type of box goes in to the correct plot in the correct aspect. All the guidance is now available, which means Barrett's are helping to upskill and build capacity within this sector. In Scotland, Barrett's have more than 100 Swift nesting bricks planned over the next few developments across 3 of their divisions based in Edinburgh, Glasgow and Aberdeen. 87 of those are planned to be in the Portobello development in Edinburgh, and that's what we've been working on for the past year. Barrett's hope that this will inspire others to follow suit because the cost is minimal and the benefits for people and the iconic Swift are more than worth it. Okay, so thank you for Barrett's for sharing that information. And we do hope that it inspires other housing developers across many countries to include the Swift bricks. So just wrapping up here and looking over some common questions about new neighbours. A big concern is cleanliness. However, Swifts are one of the cleanest birds. They eat or carry away their droppings from their nest. You do not need to clean nests annually. Some people say you do, but you do not. For about 2 weeks at the very maximum, at the end of July, the young are left alone and the adults leave. The young may leave droppings, and these are really easily hosed down if you do it every couple of days. As new neighbours, they're awfully quiet, and whenever they wake, they leave the nest. You might hear some scratching, but they're not as loud and taking part in dawn chorus as other birds. when it is their season, they intermittently carry out screaming parties. That's what gives it a bit of a bad name. It's not that kind of shrill screaming, it's quite a light screaming sound, which I'd recommend you look up or listen out for in the summer. So they're not loud neighbours. So finally, to summarize and wrap everything up in a little bit late, what we're asking for is for you to be an advocate for Swifts and to share this presentation with your colleagues and all the different backgrounds and sectors that are present here tonight. Please share that with your colleagues. To host this training on your webpage to support it, to inspire other people in your industry and sector to make it the norm that there's Swift bricks in every building, that there's Swift nests are retained and protected, and to offer services to environmentally minded home or property owners. So as I've said, as we've mentioned, is that this is where the public domain is going. Everybody is getting way more interested in biodiversity collapse, and knows that in all levels of life we need to incorporate this way of thinking. So we have about 5 minutes left to ask a couple of questions. Joining me on the panel, we'll invite Gary Walpole-Back from NFRC, also invite Julie Dewar from the City of Edinburgh Council, and myself. So if you have any questions, we would really welcome them just now.
Katie, I think there's well, getting feedback.
Oh wow. Is that me?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's feeding back. Still.
No, it's stopped.
It's stopped now. Okay, great.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a couple of questions in the chat regarding.
Oh, fab. Yeah, I've not seen it. Scott, do you want to pick out some questions maybe if you're there?
Yeah, I can do.
Sorry. I should have asked you to do that earlier.
Sorry, let's have a quick look through.
Okay, we've got one for Gary. Can we access a list of NFRC members, and does it include Scotland, from Callie?
You can visit our website and find a contractor tab, and then you can put in a postcode and look for a radius of so many miles, so you'll be able to find them. So yeah, but I mean, I think there's a couple about working with the NFRC, some different Swift groups. More than happy to support any Swift group. You know, it needs collaboration to support, you know, a nationwide approach to this, doesn't it, Katie?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
And I've just noticed that one of our members is actually Manthorpe Building Products. When you showed
wow.
I didn't know that. So I'll be contacting them to find out, you know, if we can do some stuff together or something.
That's class. It's brilliant. That works so well. I'm just reading, does biodiversity net gain help make the case in England, and how hopeful are you that the Scottish positive effects of biodiversity will do the job in Scotland? Yeah, I guess just have our fingers crossed for if the NPF4 will be suitable for increasing biodiversity. It is, Gary and I were talking about this earlier on in the week as well, that the biodiversity net gain, it can't just be about swifts, it does need to be about everything. Swifts eat insects, for example. Like, we need to think about wildflowers and trees as well. It can't always just be species specific. It needs to be the broad approach, but hopefully it will improve things.
I think we need to get developers to understand how they can build with nature, you know, get some wild verges and some wildflowers out there. And, you know, we're looking at the architect's presentation, and it was good to see green walls and green roofs, you know, all areas, if they're intensive and you know, not just a bit of sedum put on a roof to tick a box, but you actually put in plants that are native to that area, then it will increase bug life and insect life, which obviously, you know, is part of the circle, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Julie, I think this would be one for you. So Anne has said, interested to hear about Edinburgh City Council requiring Swift boxes. Is that a mandate for all developments? Is this the case elsewhere in the Lothians? If Julie's there.
Hi, sorry, I can't see anyone at the moment, but if you can hear me, I guess that's what's important.
Yeah.
So we have the Biodiversity Action Plan, which we have an action for swifts in there, and we have our guidance. We also have policies in the local plans, so DES 3, which is about looking at what you've already got on site in terms of biodiversity and enhancing that. So I wouldn't say it's mandatory. It's something we've been working with developers, and we ask for it where we see suitable development, new flats, new student housing. We have some data to say where there is Swifts already. So if there's a development in that area, then we ask for it. And we also have some very active volunteers who also come to us and say, I've seen this development, this would be a good place for Swift. So we encourage them to go direct to the case officers and ask, and then I ask as well. So it's not mandatory, but obviously with NPF4 and with the Nature Scot guidance, which supports the policy in NPF4 for positive effects for biodiversity, that probably will come. So I hope that answers the question okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
would
great,
love to
thanks.
see it mandatory. Thanks, Anne. So I'll just scroll down. Okay, I'm just going to go from the bottom up now. Are you sure nest availability is a critical area? Where did Swift nest before humans housing came along? So I know, yeah, it's a really good point, but they nested in like cliff faces. So they're crevice loving species. They look for like the same thing, like tiny slits of access points in stone. So yeah, rock cliffs is where Swifts used to nest. However, we've developed all of those as well, essentially. So actually they moved into Swift, they moved into houses, and they do prefer that because in many cases it is protected from rain, from the elements. You don't have like the sea breeze blowing into it kind of thing. So although Swifts came before houses, the houses are still really well suited for them. I hope that answers your question, Jude. Ian, do you need to keep a distance between boxes? No, so the Swifts, they used to nest in colonies, and that's kind of what they prefer. So the young, whenever they're born, they go back to where they were born. Whenever they want to make their own nests, they go back to where they were born to create their own family. So you have this like family tree in the one space if there was availability, if there were nests available. So they like being in colonies, and there is no necessary distance between them. Like the example in the church, that was actually 6 nests within that one box where they flew into the Louvre. So literally like up and down neighbours kind of thing, and that's completely fine for them.
Hi, Katie, could I answer a question? It's Dick Newell here.
Could you answer a question?
There's one question in the chat which says, are Swift's bricks and boxes available on the market, also suitable for other birds? I think it's a very important question. I'm from Action for Swifts, by the way.
Okay.
We're trying to promote both the Swifts local network and ourselves, and we're trying to promote the concept of the universal nest box. A Swift box is very close to being universal in that house sparrows will nest in them, tree sparrows, starlings, blue tits, great tits, even house martins. So it's very easy for ecologists and planners not to agonize about what kind of nest box. Just shove up a Swift box and all these birds can timeshare. You can even get sparrows and starlings nesting in the first part of the season, and then the Swifts turn up and take over. So it's very much a universal solution, which I think is an important point. That's all.
Yeah, thank you, Dick. So yeah, that's what we would say as well, that we're not trying to like put one species above the other in terms of importance, especially when a lot of them are endangered. like Dick said as well, they can often their animal behavior, they can use them at different times of the year as well. So the swift boxes generally can exclude larger birds because of the size of the holes, but often house sparrows would nest in them as well, and again that's okay, like you're still protecting some birds, so we would still also advocate that whatever birds you're helping, that's still good, particularly if they are on the endangered list. Okay, so where are we with questions? Aren't the brick nests a water moisture entry point into buildings? So no, they're completely entirely closed off if they're put in right. So again, that's why, you know, if you're putting in even the gables where you're literally just drilling a hole in and then putting the nest boxes on the other side, that's still sealed with sealant. So the only elements that are getting in is into the water tight nest box. So it can't get into beyond that. So the boxes are not an entry point into the buildings. Let's see, what other questions were there? So is there a risk that the boxes might fall? And that's that's a totally fair enough question. Of course, like to do with insurance and that. So we've never had any feedback of nest boxes falling. We've always used a lot of nails to ensure, you know, like those ones that we put I think like 3 nails on each side, to ensure that it won't fall down. Obviously after 10 years when it's wearing away, take it down before it falls down kind of thing. But we've not had any feedback from RSPB Swift nest boxes, and we've been selling them for 20 years or so, of people putting them up and not falling down again. So as far as we are aware, there's not been a problem if they're fitted properly, with lots of nails. How many nests can be placed if we were creating new breeding site? So how many nests should be placed if we're creating a new breeding site? We'd say about 3 to 5 minimum, but upwards for as much as you'd like. Will this presentation be accessible? Yes, so this will be sent out after to everybody in attendance, and then it will also be hosted on a number of websites. So we hope that Saltire Roofing will be hosting it, perhaps NFRC, but it might be doing a more specialised one for their CPD within their curriculum. It's going to go onto the curriculum of the architecture degree for the Edinburgh College of Art, and probably hosted on the RSPB Scotland website as well. So there'll be lots of places that it will be hosted, and you'll be able to send it around to colleagues. So I hope some of these questions were answered throughout the presentation. Julie or Gary, if you see any questions worth answering, you're very welcome to jump in.
No, I didn't see any. I mean, a few have been thanking me for attending. I'm more than happy for people to contact me, you know, so if they need support at all. My email address is garywalpole@nfrc.co.uk, so it's quite straightforward. I think my name's on the screen anyway. A couple of points that I've brought out about educating the building owner or the homeowner, perhaps a one-page advice guidance sheet about, you know, I mean, I didn't realise that the Swift's quite a clean nester. You know, it's good at housekeeping and self-housekeeping, which if homeowners knew that, they might not be so worried about having birds nesting within their property. Regarding fixing nest boxes, I think someone put in the chat, screws are better than nails. Most definitely. It's about using the correct fastener for any, it doesn't matter whether it's a nest box or a flashing. For a roof system, you need to use the correct fastener, you know, and I think you mentioned in the presentation to use a plug and screw, which is the best way to fix the nest box. Regarding water integrity of the building, any bespoke system that our roofers would have developed to ensure entry for bats, for example, they're all designed with to protect the building fabric from water ingress. So they're not they're easily adaptable for Swift nest boxes as well, you know. So if they do become part of the roof fabric, i.e. not about box fixed onto the wall, then there's solutions. So that shouldn't be a concern.
Brilliant, thank you, Gary. Good to have your input. Yeah, so similarly, Tim has asked that you've had experience, Tim, about people in charge of old buildings not taking Swift's conservation seriously. How can you change their attitude? Again, just having a conversation with them in that way, like that leaflet idea is a really good idea, just to summarize the key information that you can give to people, and it's something that we're working on from both angles, like for tradespeople to be able to hand to homeowners as well, so both ways round. So I do believe through conversation, and again, that thing of like, we're getting everybody on board, we're getting the people speaking tonight kind of leading the way for all these different sectors, and hopefully they will set the standard from now on, kind of thing, and it will encourage other companies to catch up, essentially. So hopefully it'll be easier to persuade people soon. Yeah, definitely use screws, not nails though. Did not mean to say nails. Will fitting new pant tiles prevent Swifts accessing previous areas of the roof space, or do ventilator tiles need to be fitted? Tim, could you reword your question? So I'm not sure how to. Will fitting new pant tiles prevent Swifts? Yeah, Tim, if you could reword your question about the pant tile roofs, that'd be great.
Hi, Katie, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably easier if I speak rather than type it again. Yeah, it's going back to my previous question with regards to the roof that was being renovated. It's an old barn, probably 200 years of age, and it's got old pan tiles, so there was quite a few missing. So the birds were able to access where they were missing, and you've got the horizontal slats, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
So they were using those to nest again. So within the building, there was probably up to 15 nest spaces. Now, what they've done is they've basically renovated that roof and put all new pan tiles on. And the company dealing with it, I'm going to name and shame, it's English Heritage. So English Heritage has done, you know, I've been in conversation with them, and they basically said, well, when we put the new pan tiles on, the birds will still be able to access the roof space. But, you know, I'm not a roofer, I don't really know the technicalities, but to me, I don't think they can get in. Maybe they can get at the very edge of it, but not further up into the roof. That was really my question.
Yeah.
So, Tim, an old pan tile, a clay pan tile from years ago, used to be clay made, handmade with clay. Okay, so they always sat hicklety-picklety, for want of a better phrase. So there was always gaps for birds and nature to access the roof for nesting purposes. You know, Norfolk's famous for pan tile roofs and nesting birds in roofs and alike. With machine made pan tiles, they tend to sit more regular, so the gaps aren't so prominent, but I can't comment whether they've allowed for the Swifts to re-nest, but certainly you're right in the fact that old pan tiles, handmade pan tiles, never really sit correctly, so there's always gaps to allow birds in.
But this was new pan tiles being used, so you think that potentially there might not, you
it
wouldn't be able to tell
could
unless you
make,
saw it.
could
But
make it tricky. I mean, without
Yeah.
sort of, you know, seeing the specification. I mean, really and truly in a circular economy, and clay doesn't rot, there's no reason why you can't reuse the old pan tiles. There really isn't. I mean, you know, they're probably more valuable in monetary terms than new ones.
Yeah.
You know, without seeing the spec, but it is disappointing when you sort of highlight that. That's what I mean. We need to be planning how you know, exactly looking at the library down in Battle, you know, only because I've been discussing it in the last few days. You know, they put 12 bespoke nest boxes down there, so they've worked with the local Swift conservation group to ensure that, you know, the Swifts still have a home when they return.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so I wondered, Tim, if you could ask them to show you the specific pictures of where the pan tiles have their spaces between them, or therefore, if they're not, you could suggest the ventilator tiles go in as a replacement, and hopefully they respond.
Yeah, I'll try my best, but they don't seem very forthcoming. But anyway, yeah, I'll try my best. Thank you.
No, it can be hard sometimes, I understand. So yeah, we've got a link of the different Swift boxes and bricks. How do you get a developer to put Swift bricks in a new development? Any useful suggestions, please? So that's where we work with the council to kind of catch developments as they're going through planning permission, and then to respond at that point about the Swift boxes or the Swift bricks being designed in from the beginning. If we don't get a response from the developers and we contact, maybe there's an architect linked to it as well. If not, then contact the homeowners as well. All this information is listed in the council weekly. This new development is happening, here's all the information. So you can contact them through the council or directly. They often have their email addresses on it. But again, as what Tim said, sometimes it is hard to get through to the right person. And that is why hopefully this work with Barrett's is again leading the way for new developments work. There's obviously a lot of housing development happening across the UK, and it is really vital that it's hand in hand with nature, that it's not just completely colonizing everywhere. So yeah, hopefully there will be a bit of a change of pace and consciousness around it within the development industry. So any more questions? So I'll wrap up in another couple of minutes. It's a really great question, so I would like to answer as many as possible. What materials Swift box is made of? Are they plastic, brick with a hole? So if you, Charlie, if you want to look at the link that Scott shared about all the different boxes, they're mostly plywood, but you can buy already made ones of woodcrete as well. So they're not plastic, but it is best to have naturally treated wood if you're using it, because otherwise it can be toxic to the Swifts if you're building your own. Callie, I think the key message is to retain historical nesting sites. These are the key to maintaining the colony. Yeah, absolutely. Adding boxes and bricks is almost secondary, additional. Yeah, Callie, I would totally agree. So the key is, yeah, protect what's there. And if in worst case scenario it needs to be removed, then to add the boxes as secondary. But in the new builds, the bricks, because there won't be anything there, the bricks are quite fundamental. So we'll take this as the final question from Nora. Has Edinburgh had any interest from other councils in copying Edinburgh's planning guidelines? Yes, so we had an apology from Newcastle Council that got in touch with me earlier in the year to ask about the project and to replicate that where they are. So hopefully they'll be watching this and will be able to implement something similar where they are. Okay, I think we'll leave it there. And yeah, I'll say a huge thank you to all the speakers, Gary, Niall, Helen for her slides, and Saltire Roofing as well. And thank you so much for attending and all of your questions and staying on to the end, even though that was quite run over a little bit. But yeah, again, just I really hope that you're able to spread the word wherever you are in whatever sector you're in, and that yeah, we can tackle Swift conservation at many levels. So thank you so much again for coming.
Thanks for inviting us.